Fallout is easily one of the most iconic video game series of all time. This fan favourite series spans multiple decades, genres, and, with the recent release of the television series, different media entirely. Beloved not only for its unpredictable gameplay and poignant storytelling, but also its 1950s retro-futuristic aesthetics. Today, we'll be taking you on another relaxing stroll through the desolated wastelands of facts, trivia, and secrets in the Fallout franchise. With that said, where better to begin than with the granddaddy of it all, 1997's Fallout. In a developer profile featured on fan website No Mutants Allowed, a game designer for Fallout, Jesse Tighe, gave some insight into the game's design and his impact on the series as a whole. In the interview, Jesse talks about how he fought to keep companions in the game even after they'd been scrapped from the project, saying, "I lobbied hard for a couple of things that made it into the game. Companions would join the Vault Dweller since they were in the initial design doc but got cut, but I figured out a way to fake Ian into the game and the programmers decided to make it stick." The Ian companion, referred to here, is actually based on one of Jesse's best friends at the time. In a behind the scenes creator chat on the Modifius YouTube channel, Jesse clarified that, quote, "The actual Ian is still alive and doing well, and has never shot me in the back with a submachine gun." Ian even has a sly reference of his own. When asked about the apocalypse using the "tell me more about" mechanic, he will tell the player, "You know, we will always have war, just the next one's going to be fought with sticks." This is a nod to the famous quote by theoretical physicist Albert Einstein, "I don't know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." While on the topic of the various companions in Fallout Bible 9, Jesse Tighe states that the companion character of Tighe is at least partially inspired by the character of Master Yupa from Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, the 1984 Japanese animated film which was directed by Hayao Miyazaki, a year before founding Studio Ghibli. Tighe said, "In some ways Tighe is reminiscent of Master Yupa from Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. He carries a gas mask just in case, wears hardened leather armor, has a knife, knuckles, canteen, and the usual survival gear. I pictured him as this guy in leather armor, Fallout style, with a gas mask around his neck, goggles to keep out sand and glare, a sand-coloured cloak usable for camouflage and to keep the sun off, and a double-barreled shotgun." Tighe himself also references the game that ostensibly started the Fallout franchise, Wasteland, with his grandfather being a, quote, desert ranger. If you don't know, the Desert Rangers are a faction featured in Wasteland. Despite never uttering a single line of dialogue, for obvious reasons, Dogmeat may well be one of, if not the most iconic companion in the entire series, with different iterations of the character appearing in every mainline title. Scott Benny was a designer who arrived at the name Dogmeat for the player's dog companion. The name was initially applied to Jacob's dog in the hub, previously named Dogshit. Later, the name was applied to the dog companion by either Tim Kaine or Jason Anderson. Fallout even contains references to its own cut content, things that had been planned early on in development but were removed for various reasons. If you let the Master's army destroy Necropolis, a ghoul refugee who survived the invasion can be found hiding behind a bookcase with dialogue talking about the invasion, whilst also mentioning the attacking super mutants had some steam trucks. These steam trucks are the only working mechanically propelled machines mentioned in the game, and are only mentioned in this Fallout game. In the 8th installment of the Fallout Bible, Fallout 2 developer Chris Avellone revealed that these steam trucks were planned for Fallout, but they were only mentioned in passing for art reasons and gameplay reasons, as if there was too much focus on these vehicles, players might start to ask where they are and why they can't drive them. Since we briefly mentioned a ghoul, why don't we take a quick look at their beginnings in the franchise? Interestingly, ghouls didn't initially have a clear in-universe origin. Over time, there's been some debate as to the official lore for their origins among Fallout devs. Tim Kaine has stated previously that ghouls are just a result of humans being bombarded with huge amounts of radiation, which is in line with scientific understanding of the effects of radiation exposure as understood in the 1950s. Chris Taylor, however, said that a mixture of both radiation and the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, that the Master used to create his race of super mutants is why they exist. Ghouls are a type of mutant. Super mutants are humans with no or minimal radiation damage who have been exposed to FEV. Ghouls are humans with significant radiation damage exposed to FEV. While Chris Avallone initially sided with his fellow Chris's view in his Fallout Bible, he was later convinced to support the radiation-only version. In our humble opinion, this only adds to the flavour of these mysterious characters and how they came to be after so much knowledge was lost to nuclear destruction. The character Set, the leader of Necropolis in Fallout, seemed to be based on Set from the ancient Egyptian mythology. In myth, Set was originally the Lord of the Desert, master of storms, disorder and warfare, and in general a trickster. He was also seen as the embodiment of the necessary and creative element of violence and disorder within an ordered world. As such, Set, leading the shadowy town of Necropolis, fits this reference quite well. While he rules over a safe haven for ghouls, he also despises the notion of peace. As one ghoul leader puts it in-game, the surface of Necropolis and the water is controlled by Set and his ghouls. We are very much a peaceful group, which disgusts Set. So, while not necessarily evil, he certainly is violent and chaotic. Set's a bit of an arse, so let's look at some real foes. The floater enemies are the creation of Jason D. Anderson, who after moving on from Interplay to found Troika Games, Anderson was most famously creative director and designer on what is often described as a flawed masterpiece, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Pavel Olsir-Dembowski, the creator of the Fallout Wiki, allegedly got a quote from Anderson relating to the floater, saying, "We called it the Sphincter Monster after I used a porn image for its mouth." Though it's worth noting there is no record of this quote posted online. The internal files in Fallout and Fallout 2, however, do potentially back this up. The floater is referred to as MASPHNXX.FRM in the game's data, which at least somewhat resembles the word sphincter. In a Reddit Q&A about the infamous Fallout 76, Jeff Gardner and Ferre Bourdois were asked if the floaters in Fallout 76 are the same creatures that appeared in previous Fallout games, after them having been absent in Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Bourdois responded saying, "Yes, they are the same floaters from before. FEV research was being done in both Appalachia and the West Coast." Despite receiving some mild criticism for its clunky nature, overall Fallout was met with an overwhelmingly positive response from players and critics alike. This led to a follow-up just 1 year later with the release of Fallout 2 in the fall of 1998, and of course, it is also full to the brim with notable trivia, references and Easter eggs. Something very notable about Fallout 2, especially given the discourse in modern gaming, is that it was one of the first video games to include an LGBTQ+ representation. More specifically, it featured same-sex marriage. The small town of Modoc features a brother and sister, Maria and Davin. It's possible for the player to seduce and marry either of these two characters regardless of the sex of their character. When asked in 2019 if anyone at Black Isle Studios pushed back over this inclusion in the game, designer Chris Avallone said, "Not one. It's one of the benefits of being in control of your own franchise. Other external franchises would have potentially blocked that or asked we not include it at the time." He also went on to explain that fans didn't seem to care about it when playing the game. In an interview with Russian gaming outlet Game.exe, Fallout 2 producer and lead designer Fergus Urquhart revealed that in the early stages of the game's development, it was planned that the main character would again be the Vault Dweller from Fallout 1. This idea was scrapped early in the game's production, however, as the team thought it would be difficult to explain not only the loss of all the characters' equipment from the previous game, but also the resetting of all of their perks earned throughout it. This led to the developers settling on the idea of a brand new character referred to as the Chosen One, that just so happens to be a descendant of the Vault Dweller from the original game, more specifically, their grandchild. A running joke in the game is that the Chosen One can't really spell Wanamingo properly. Throughout the game they refer to them as a number of different things like Wanamingle and Wanna-whatchamacallit on several occasions. Funnily enough, Chris Avallone also didn't spell it correctly either, spelling it with a double N. Chris Avallone did not like the idea of Wanamingos, and not just because of his inability to spell their name. In the Fallout Bible, Chris explains that Wanamingos, like many other things in the Wasteland, are the result of FEV experimentation. They were originally created before the Great War as bioengineered monsters that could be dropped into enemy territory as a means of attack, with their unusually long lifespan making them relentlessly effective. However, the Wanamingos encountered by the player in Fallout 2 are ones that actually escaped their confinement and spread across New California, creating their nests in the sunless crevices and uninhabited ruins of the Wasteland. These creatures were created with a so-called dead man's switch that would prevent them from reproducing, and their lifespan would end around the year 2246, several years after the Chosen One encounters them in Fallout 2. Avalone wrote, "They do live a long time, but they were dying out at the time of Fallout 2. They have only been sighted in the F2 area and nowhere else in the Wastelands. The eggs you see in Fallout 2 are the last generation of Wanamingos to exist in the Wasteland, and the young Wanamingos seen in F2 will perish in 5 years, and their parents a few years before that. An internal genetic clock will simply stop ticking, and they'll fall over dead." As a final note, this is strictly a personal decision on my part. If you want them to live for a fan fiction, pen and paper role-playing campaign purposes, or your own peace of mind, feel free to have some of them survive the stopping of their genetic clock. In the Black Isle universe, however, the little buggers are already dead and their irradiated shells are scattered among the floor of the abandoned mines throughout Northern California, where they make nice crunchy noises when you step on them. True to his word, the Wanamingos did not appear directly in any more Fallout games, unless you count the plushes in Fallout 76. They were planned to appear in the capital wastelands of Fallout 3, even having concept art drawn up for them, but they were cut from the game during development. Of course, no one is safe from bugs and glitches, and Fallout 2 is no exception, and we're not talking about rad roaches. In the top left corner of the map to Broken Hills, 4 mysterious metal chests can be seen off to the side that are seemingly inaccessible. It is, however, possible to reach them with a very specific method. Start by going near the top right corner of the map and clicking on the half hex right between the fence and the part of the grid which you would click to enter the world map, and then click the half hex right above the fence. Your character will then briefly walk off screen and appear on the other side of the fence, which should allow you to make your way to the chests. These chests contain the stock of all 4 shops in Broken Hills. They can also have their contents stolen without the risk of the player losing any karma or representation. Why these chests are here is unknown, but we're sure many a Vault Dweller are glad they are, if they can reach them. And this is far from the only questionable detail in the game. Being set in a post-apocalyptic America, and more specifically the future, Fallout 2 refers to American football's Super Bowl 112. The game mentions that the Little Rock Saints played the Anaheim Jets on February 14th, 2075 on Super Sunday, with the Little Rock Saints losing 90-95. However, this information is from the Sierra Depot GNN transcript, which is canonically an unreliable source, though perhaps this is just futuristic cope from Saints fans. Interestingly though, in the real world, the Super Bowl began in the year 1967, which means that the Super Bowl 112 would not fall in 2075, but rather 4 years later in 2079. Further to this, February 14th, 2075 will be a Thursday, so unless the days of the week changed, or Super Bowl Sunday became the less catchy Super Bowl Thursday, all of this information is dubious at best. Fallout 2 also has its fair share of odd characters with odd backgrounds, such as the character of Ethel Wright, who seems to have a small piece of trivia related to her name. The name Ethel, and its spelling in particular, appears to be a play on words stemming from the common name for ethanol, the most prevalent alcohol found in beverages, also known as ethyl alcohol. This is backed up further by the fact that her family's livelihood is based around distilling alcohol and her disapproval of it. The character Marcus appears as a companion and talking head in Fallout 2, and in Fallout New Vegas as an NPC.
Didn't your folks explain this to you?
He's voiced by Michael Dorn in both, which is why he was given the line, "I am not a merry mutant." to reference Dawn's role as Worf in the Star Trek Next Generation episode Cupid, in which Worf and the rest of the Enterprise crew are thrust into a fantasy world where Picard is Robin Hood, and much to his chagrin, Worf becomes one of his merry men.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
Marcus also claims to be the only super mutant who is no longer sterile. However, Chris Avellone, who actually wrote this specific line of dialogue, has since confirmed that this was a joke by Marcus and that all super mutants remain entirely sterile due to the effects of FEV. It would be a few years before fans would see another installment of the franchise. In 2001, Fallout saw its first departure from the RPG conventions with the release of Fallout Tactics: Brotherhood of Steel. The much anticipated follow-up was overall well received, reaching the top 10 of the NPD Intellect's computer game sales ranking, peaking at 4th place in its second week. This is particularly impressive when you consider the significant shift in genre from previous titles. While the game may differ mechanically, as with every Fallout, it's filled to the brim with references to other media and pop culture. A bonus mission exists in the game that takes place in the town of Springfield. This mission only appeared on the 4th bonus CD of Fallout Tactics, though it can be accessed by using Notepad to edit the file boss.cfg. By changing the value of misc bonus mission equals false to true and saving, the Springfield area will become available. Springfield is a clear reference to the hit 90s cartoon The Simpsons, but the similarities don't stop at the name. The town is overshadowed by 2 large steam towers from a nuclear power plant. There's also a pub called Joe's Tavern, which could not only be a parody of Homer's drinking hole of choice, Moe's Tavern, but perhaps also a reference to a specific episode of The Simpsons, Lemon of Troy, in which Shelbyville is shown to be a mirror of Springfield, even featuring its own dive bar with the highly coincidental name Joe's. There is a bronze statue in the town square reminiscent of Jebediah Springfield featured in The Simpsons, as well as Planet Donuts with a large donut sign in reference to the iconic Lard Lad donuts. There are other references to film and TV in the Rock Falls mission. The Raider bosses are called Bo, Daisy, Jesse, and Luke, which are the names of the Duke family from the Dukes of Hazzard TV series. This mission also features a prisoner called Miles Dyson and a robotic arm, both of which are references to James Cameron's sci-fi classic Terminator 2: Judgment Day. The Terminator references don't end there though. The Great Bend mission boasts a hydraulic press similar to what is used to destroy the Terminator in the original movie. In the game, the player can also encounter a cybernetic Brahmin called the B-1000, which itself is a reference to the T-1000 from Judgment Day. The RoboCow also has several lines of dialogue that make comical nods to the Terminator series, such as, "I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. I am a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal T-bone. Hasta la vista, coffee," and of course, "Moo'll be back," among others. The 1999 hit movie The Matrix also gets a sly nod. The Coppertops special encounter features humans being used as what are essentially batteries to power a robot empire. While in Fallout Tactics, the humans are being forced to run on treadmills rather than directly hooked up to machines to have their electrical impulses harvested, the themes are too similar to be mere coincidence. Of course, there's quite a few references to other games as well. The Mort special encounter featured a character of the same name, which is a reference to Planetscape Torment, for which Chris Avellone was lead designer. In both games, Mort is a floating skull with a New York accent. Additionally, the Devil Thorn jacket armor is a reference to the Demon Spike coat, a unique armor in the original Diablo. Not only do the items have similar names, but they also have identical stat lines. Lastly, there's even a reference to a few tech giants. In the Newton mission, the player has a conversation with Albert Lamore. Albert mentions an entity known as Satan Soft, who has a devoted follower by the name of Beelza Gates, a combination of Beelzebub, the devil, and Microsoft founder Bill Gates. In the same mission, the player also encounters a man by the name of Tobias Pest. Tobias makes mention of a paradise referred to as Panasonica, a nod to Panasonic, and also says that after 11 days of fasting, he was visited in his deepest dreams by a Saint Sony. Now, when we mentioned Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel, some of you might have thought to yourselves, I don't remember the tactics, I thought it was just called Brotherhood of Steel. Well, fear not, it's not the Mandela effect. Fallout Brotherhood of Steel was another spin-off title and yet another departure from the classic Fallout open world, having the player follow a much more linear adventure in the wastes with what are essentially stages. It was also the first Fallout game to reach the console market, seeing a release on both Xbox and PlayStation 2. The game's said to be set somewhere between the events of Fallout 1 and 2, attempting to clear up perceived issues with the main story and remnants of the Super Mutant Uprising. While it's generally accepted that the game takes place in Texas, this is never actually stated anywhere in the game, but there are distinct clues, such as many of the Brotherhood of Steel talking with southern accents in the town of Carbon, which is a real town in Texas. That being said, there are 18 towns called Carbon in the US. Another interesting note is that an energy drink called Balls appears prominently in many areas of the game in lieu of the iconic Nuka-Cola, which decidedly never emigrated outside of the region because of the dominating presence of Nuka-Cola elsewhere. With all of that said, in a 2007 interview with GameSpy when talking about the canon of Fallout 3, Todd Howard reiterated, "For our purposes, neither Fallout Tactics nor Fallout Brotherhood of Steel happened." In this same interview, Todd brings up Fallout 2, stating, "Fallout 2 is also great, but it was a little too nod wink wink in its jokes. Too many pop culture references, too much breaking of the fourth wall." So, with that in mind, let's move on to Fallout 3 and its nigh on countless pop culture references. While we're going to cover a great number of them, there's some that we've decided to skip, like the game's many allusions to Mad Max. Let's start with the Mr. Gutsy series of robots, who will often say,
"There's nothing I like better than the smell of plasma in the morning,"
when in combat. This is an allusion to the line,
"I love the smell of napalm in the morning,"
from Francis Ford Coppola's iconic movie Apocalypse Now, and the introduction of Lieutenant Colonel William Bill Kilgore. The atomic bomb that the player has the choice of detonating or not, as well as the Church of the Children of Atom, are both references to the second film in the original Planet of the Apes series, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, in which a population of telepathic humans worships an ancient but intact nuclear bomb. Now, would it really be a sci-fi game without at least a couple of Blade Runner references? The replicated man is a clear reference to the replicants and overall plot of the film. This was later expanded on with the synths in Fallout 4. While in combat, the super mutant companion Forks will directly quote Leon Kowalski's line in the opening of Blade Runner,
Wake up! Time to die!
Wake up! Time to die.
After making the decision to defuse the bomb in Megaton, the player is given a house as a reward. The butler that comes with this house is a Mr. Handy called Wadsworth. This is a nod to Wadsworth the Butler from the film adaptation of Clue, or Cluedo for those outside of North America. As with other Mr. Handy robots in Fallout 3, Wadsworth speaks in a very similar fashion to Tim Curry in the film.
Is everything ready?
Allow me to introduce myself.
The character Roy McLaren will occasionally say,
"Can't nobody eat 50 eggs."
which is a reference to the scene in Cool Hand Luke where the man himself accepts a challenge to eat 50 eggs in an hour, like the guy from Smash Mouth.
I can eat 50 eggs.
Nobody can eat 50 eggs.
In the Pulaski Preservation Shelter during the Those quest, the player encounters Brian Wilkes, who will say,
"Now I know what a TV dinner feels like."
This is of course a direct quote from the movie Die Hard.
I know what a TV dinner feels like.
His name also has the same initials as Bruce Willis, the actor for John McClane. The quest's name itself is also a reference to the 1954 sci-fi horror classic Them, a film that features giant ants as a result of nuclear testing in New Mexico. The weapon Callahan's Magnum refers to Dirty Harry's signature Smith & Wesson 44 Magnum revolver. If the player has all the add-ons installed, it is by far the most powerful handgun in the game, fitting with Harry's quote about his own weapon,
Being this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off.
and of course the character Harold Callahan, who is briefly mentioned in Fallout 3's Broken Steel DLC, is a reference to the titular Harry Callahan from Dirty Harry. Another movie gun reference comes in the form of the Infiltrator. Its design is directly inspired by the gun used by the character Snake Plissken in the film Escape from New York. The Blood Ties quest and Lucy West, the woman who starts it, is a reference to Lucy Westenra, a character from Bram Stoker's Dracula. This quest also involves numerous people who sustain themselves through the consumption of human blood. Lucy tells the player to deliver the letter to her family in the small town of Arafu. Arafu is a real village in Romania, best known for its proximity to the former castle of Vlad Tepes, aka Vlad the Impaler, who the famous Count Dracula is based on. Mentats, one of the many chems in the Fallout games, temporarily increases intelligence and perception. This is a reference to the sci-fi epic novel Dune, in which Mentats are humans trained to function as living computers and can effortlessly process complex computations and retain huge amounts of information. Fallout 3's Mothership Zeta add-on has several pop culture references of its own. Elliot Terkorian shares his first name and initials with the main human protagonist of Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Elliot Taylor. When asked what the Zetans want with Earth, Elliot will come up with 4 possible explanations, all of which reference different sci-fi movies and TV shows. The resource-consuming theory is the plot of the movie Independence Day. The theory that aliens seeded life on Earth comes from Season 6, Episode 20 of Star Trek The Next Generation, titled The Chase. And the theory that the Zetans may have misinterpreted some part of human culture as a declaration of war comes from the 1996 movie Mars Attacks. The theory that they want to replace people on Earth with clones is the plot of the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Additionally, the way the abominations point and scream to alert each other to hostiles also mimics the alien clones from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Another nod in Mothership Zeta can be found in the waste disposal area of the ship during the quest Among the Stars. There is an optional interaction here with Sally where the player can choose what an incredible smell you've discovered. This is a reference to one of Han Solo's lines in Star Wars A New Hope after the heroes find themselves trapped in the maintenance level of the Death Star.
What an incredible smell you've discovered!
The supplemental book The Art of Fallout 3 mentions during the design process of the robots for the game, Emil Pagliarulo's input for every robot was to make it more like Robbie the Robot. Robbie the Robot first appeared in 1956's Forbidden Planet, but is often cited as the hardest working robot in Hollywood, having starred in numerous film and TV shows, including The Invisible Boy, The Addams Family, Columbo, and perhaps most famously, Lost in Space. While the Protectron's design went through many iterations, the team settled on a vintage look that captures the quintessential 1950s robot character more than any other. Another classic movie gets a nod at the Broadway cinema marquee. The film titled I Married a Maoist references the 1949 film The Woman on Pier 13, which was originally planned to be titled I Married a Communist. Another possible reference could be Dr. Zimmer, as the 1993 film Mandroid also features Dr. Carl Zimmer, who was the creator of an android. There's a couple of fun nods to the timeless Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Brotherhood of Steel Squire Maxon says that he sort of shot Sentinel Lions and that it's just a flesh wound. This is of course a reference to the Black Knight from the Holy Grail, who, after having both his arms removed, claims that it's just a flesh wound.
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left.
Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
Not only this, but Kimber's dialogue, that's funny, I thought we were an autonomous collective, while a more subtle reference is a direct quote spoken to King Arthur by a woman when she finds out there even is a King of England.
I thought we were an autonomous collective.
It will come as a surprise to nobody that the quest Stealing Independence and its main objective of stealing the Declaration of Independence is likely inspired by the plot of the 2004 film National Treasure, which involves Nicolas Cage, presumably pretending to be a different person, tasked with stealing the Declaration of Independence. When asked what they do for the Brotherhood of Steel, Knight Captain Dusk tells the player she's a sniper, and follows up with, "Put any muty bastard within 1 mile of me and my rifle, and well, Pack it up, troops, fight's over. This is a reference to Saving Private Ryan, where the character Jackson makes the same remark, though he's talking about Hitler and not mutants.
Used to put me in this here sniper rifle anywhere, up to and including 1 mile of Adolf Hitler, with a clear line of sight, sir. Pack your bags, fellas, war's over. Amen.
When asked their real name, Knight Captain Gallows responds with, "What's the pool up to?" Similar to the response from another character in Saving Private Ryan, Captain Miller, when asked a similar question about his occupation.
What's the pool on me up to right now? What's it up to?
One of the Brotherhood of Steel soldiers attempts to rally his brethren by asking whether they want to live forever. This quote may be referencing a line from both the film adaptation of Starship Troopers and Robert A. Heinlein's original book.
Come on, you want to live forever?
This references a quote that sometimes is attributed to the real United States Marine Sergeant Major Daniel Joseph Dan Daly. Though this quote has an extensive history, going back to at least Frederick the Great, who allegedly said something along the lines of, "You damn rascals, do you want to live forever?" In Tenpenny Tower, the player can find a tricycle in the hallway, as well as bloodstains on the walls and an overturned chair. This is a reference to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and the iconic shot following Danny riding his tricycle through the halls of the hotel, as well as the scene in which the main character sees 2 little girls in the hallway, then blinks, and they are laying butchered on the ground. There's another nod behind Mayor McCready's full name, Robert Joseph McCready. R.J. McCready, played by Kurt Russell, is the name of the main protagonist in John Carpenter's The Thing, which is the best film ever, by the way. Once the player beats the mission, The American Dream, and convinces President Eden to self-destruct, Three Dog will report the incident on Galaxy News Radio, saying,
"Ding dong, the sanctimonious, self-righteous, self-proclaimed presidential asshole is dead."
This is a reference to Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, sung by the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz.
Ding dong, the witch is dead, witch, oh witch, oh witch.
In Fallout 3's The Pit add-on, Everett says the line, "From here to Monroeville." This is a reference to Dawn of the Dead, a film which takes place in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. Tenpenny Tower and its attack by ghouls could also be another reference to the film series. Land of the Dead's Fiddler's Green is a fortress tower owned by wealthy elitists which is constantly assaulted by zombies. While talking to the slave found in the game's second add-on, one dialogue option players can deliver is rather blunt. "Your clothes, give them to me, now." While this may just seem like a forceful demand, it's also the same demand delivered by Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, literally word for word when encountering a group of thugs after he travels back through time, subsequently losing his clothes in the process.
"Your clothes. Give them to me, now."
In addition to this, the picture used to present the cyborg perk also bears a striking resemblance to the T-800's appearance, with a robotic face half covered in flesh having been badly damaged as seen in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Now, while the Fallout series is set on Earth in an alternate universe, it still includes the mention of Morse code, a language using a series of dots and dashes to represent letters of the alphabet. The professor in Fallout 2's Broken Hills talks about Morse code, but Fallout 3 was the first game in the series to actually use the code. The fact that it is still referred to as Morse code implies that the real-world inventor, Samuel Morse, existed in the Fallout universe. Several radio transmission stations utilize such messages. In the Operation Anchorage add-on, a message in Morse code is audible from the ham radio in General Chase's tent. If the player bothers to sit and translate this code, they should understand the message as, "War never changes." In another add-on for the game, The Pit, a transmission is heard in the Pit Uptown abandoned apartments. This time the decoded message isn't quite as simple, being entirely written in German. It reads like this. I'll just put it on screen because I can't read German. When translated into English, the message is, "The abyss also looks into you," a partial quote from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. In the Mothership Zeta add-on, a radio on the Mothership Zeta bridge also emits Morse code. The message says, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Needless to say, this is the iconic quote from the first successful moon landing. Within the game's data is a set of Enclave power armor, and while unattainable naturally, it can be spawned into the game through the use of console commands. This armor differs from others in its stats, but also bears the file name Robo-Thor Armor, which refers directly to the Marvel Comics character Thor, with the helmet having a unique design resembling that of Thor's signature helmet. The game has plenty of nods to the real world too. In the Fallout universe, the Defiant 7 capsule was a pre-war spacecraft piloted by Captain Carl Bell, who is credited as the first human in space, successfully circumnavigating the Earth in 12 minutes and 7 seconds. Bell is said to have died on May 5th, 1961, when the capsule crashed upon re-entering the atmosphere. This echoes the real-life suborbital flight of Alan Shepard, the first American in space, which took place on the same date. His capsule, however, was named Freedom 7. The number 7 was used in the names of all crewed flights of Project Mercury, as the pilots were collectively known as the Mercury 7. This is referenced again by the Clarabella 7, another USSA spaceflight in the Fallout universe. One of our favourite bits of trivia was discovered within the programming of the Broken Steel DLC. During a cutscene in which the player character must travel on the presidential metro, they ride on a moving train. But this train is not simply an object in the game's code that transports the player as one might expect. As a result of limitation in the Gamebryo engine, the engine for Fallout 3, this cutscene triggers a bizarre series of events. Equipping an NPC hidden beneath the train with a glove which turns its right hand invisible, while also rendering a model of the presidential metro car on top of it, almost as though the NPC is wearing the carriage as a massive hat. An animation then plays where the NPC's human model sits down and begins to slide across the ground in an arc that simulates the movement of the car along the metro track. The NPC isn't even a unique character, it is actually Rivet City's own Abraham Washington, the owner and curator of the Capitol Preservation Society, named after both George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Concept art can be a time capsule, giving us a glimpse into the game's earliest ideas. Locations, characters and creatures all change throughout development, and let's not forget weapons. Concept art and even unused models exist for scrapped weapons like the Cryolator and Cryo Grenade. The grenade did make it into the Mothership Zeta DLC, however it got a facelift with a new texture and mesh. The Cryolator was cut completely from the final version of the game, but a different freeze ray with the same name did make a later appearance as a usable weapon in Fallout 4. The Wanamingo from Fallout 2 was at one point also planned to appear in Fallout 3, but was never added to the final game. Concept art shows it as a possible variant of the original, being much bigger and without any tentacles. Many members of the Black Isle team responsible for Fallout 2, as well as collaborating on many other iconic groundbreaking CRPGs, moved on to found Obsidian Entertainment after the studio's closure. They returned in astonishing fashion with the release of Fallout New Vegas. New Vegas is often cited as the pinnacle of the Fallout series, with its top quality dialogue, RPG mechanics, numerous factions and weaving story that gives the player ample choice in how they navigate the post-apocalyptic wastes and the Sin City Strip. New Vegas managed to establish its own unique position within the Fallout universe. While it was developed by many members of the team behind an earlier Fallout entry, it was technically created by a third party and not by the IP holders of the franchise. This can make one question whether the game is considered canon in the wider Fallout series, with the new Fallout show bringing things further into question. When Todd Howard was interviewed by Vanity Fair, he revealed that the live-action Fallout show would be considered canon to the games, making sure to note that it would tell an original story rather than retell tales from the existing entries into the series. After the show was released, however, many fans felt this wasn't the case and lamented the show's apparent retconning of several events from New Vegas. Most took particular issue with the 6th episode, The Trap, which shows a blackboard depicting the end of Shady Sands, the capital of the New California Republic. The board shows Shady Sands' destruction as occurring in 2277, while New Vegas took place in 2281. And in New Vegas, the player will acknowledge that Shady Sands still stands, and there is no mention of its devastation, though the player does not get a chance to visit it. Bethesda designer Emil Pagliaro tried to assure fans on Twitter that New Vegas is still part of the franchise canon, and claimed that he is also very protective of the series' lore, and even demonstrated this with a timeline of the Fallout series. This timeline showed that both New Vegas and the TV show are part of this timeline, and that even Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel is considered canon. However, the timeline did little to address the inconsistencies with the blackboard scene from episode 6. In perhaps an overreaching set of accusations from fans, some felt the retcon revealed that Bethesda held a grudge against New Vegas developers Obsidian Entertainment. New Vegas is often touted as the best Fallout game in the series, and it seemed to fans that Bethesda, whose games are often criticized for lacking polish, may have purposely tried to decanonize New Vegas with the Fallout show to spite Obsidian. These are, however, 3 possible explanations as to how this inconsistency of the blackboard exists. When making the Fallout TV show, the writing staff made a simple mistake when adapting a franchise with a huge volume of existing lore that spans multiple games over multiple decades with multiple writers behind them, and merely wrote the wrong date on the blackboard in a single scene. Whoever wrote 2277 on the blackboard was simply misinformed and had to use a degree of guesswork to calculate the date that Shady Sands fell. Being a post-apocalyptic setting with poor historical record keeping, this may have simply been an approximate date. Or 3, it could have been a sly reference to the DLC expansion of New Vegas, Lonesome Road, which gives the player the option of nuking the New California Republic, who are based in Shady Sands. Though whether this ending to the DLC is considered canon or not is unknown. We think the answer is probably 1. It's probably the first one, if we're realistic, isn't it? As you may have guessed, New Vegas also includes a great deal of references to films, as is typical Fallout fashion. The challenge, Even a God King Can Bleed, from the Gunrunner's Arsenal add-on, requires the player to cripple Kaisar's head using throwing spears. This is a nod to the film 300, where Leonidas I of Sparta says that by the end of the central plot he'll prove that even a God King can bleed, doing so by striking Xerxes' cheek by throwing a spear. Many of New Vegas' Easter eggs will reveal themselves if the player has the Wild Wasteland trait. One example is that some chatter heard on the NCR emergency radio station will include a few special phrases, including
Game over, man, game over!
And
They're coming out of the walls, man, they're coming out of the damn walls!
2 phrases lifted straight from the second entry of the Alien franchise, 1986's Aliens.
Man, game over, man. It's game over. We're coming out of the wall. We're coming out of the goddamn wall.
Another reference to Aliens comes from the Kill Challenge, Nuke It from Orbit, which references the line,
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Another film reference, though of a slightly different ilk, comes from Mr. New Vegas when he ends a certain news segment while the player has the Wild Wastelands trait, with the line,
Stay classy, New Vegas.
This references Ron Burgundy's catchphrase in Anchorman with his sign-off,
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
An additional Wild Wasteland reference occurs when Dean Domino takes out his first ghost person, which causes him to state that "He's not dead, it's a trick, get an axe," a wink and a nod to 1992's entry of the Evil Dead series, Army of Darkness.
It's a trick. Get an axe.
Rodents of an unusually large size can be found in various places with the trait active. These rodents are a reference to the film The Princess Bride, in which Wesley states that he doesn't believe rodents of such a size exist, just before he is immediately attacked by one.
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
These rodents are part of a challenge titled I Am Not Left-Handed, a nod to the character Inigo Montoya from the movie, who informs the man in black that he isn't left-handed during their sword fight.
Because I know something you don't know.
And what is that?
I am not left-handed.
Benefit or a Hazard, one of the game's Gunrunner's Arsenal challenges, tasks the player with killing 15 robot targets using the 5.56 pistol or its variant, That Gun. That Gun makes reference to the 1982 science fiction film Blade Runner in several ways. The Arsenal challenge is taken directly from a quote by the film's protagonist, Rick Deckard, in which he says,
"Replicants are like any other machine. They're either a benefit or a hazard,"
referring to the film's central plot of synthetic humans known as replicants. The task of killing robots is quite plainly in reference to this too, with Deckard's mission in the film being to eliminate 4 rogue replicants. The gun needed to complete the challenge is a recreation of the 223 pistol as featured in the original Fallout and Fallout 2, and while this can be seen as a reference to earlier Fallout games, the gun's primary design in those games was visually based on the same prop gun used as Deckard's primary sidearm in Blade Runner. Another homage to an age-old classic film is simply in the achievement Love the Bomb, making reference to the film Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. In a heavily booby-trapped house located in Nipton, situated across the street from the general store, protected by a wall of sandbags around its door, a note can be found about vital essence. This note contains a rant about vital essence, written with a paranoid tone similar to that of General Jack D. Ripper's obsession with precious bodily fluids in Dr. Strangelove.
And the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
To further drive home allusions to Strangelove, the logo of the Atomic Wrangler references the film's most famous scene, in which Major T.J.K. King Kong rides a nuclear bomb like a rodeo cowboy as it falls through the sky. If the player has the Wild Wasteland trait while at Cottonwood Grove, one of the buildings will be tagged with graffiti saying "Romans go home" in Latin. This is a reference to Monty Python's The Life of Brian, but it isn't the only nod to Python in the game. In the basement of one of the churches located in Camp Searchlight, it's possible to find 3 holy frag grenades, referencing Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and its famous holy hand grenade. Another reference to the Holy Grail appears in the quest They Went That-A-Way. When talking to Jessup, he'll be shocked that the player survived, allowing them to respond with, "I got better." This phrase, and the context of its use, is just one of many running gags within the film.
I got better.
Another Wild Wasteland Easter egg can be found outside of Cerulean Robotics. Players may find themselves confronted by Maud's Muggers, a gang of elderly thugs. These biddies are a nod to another Python gag, specifically the skit Hell's Grannies from Monty Python's Flying Circus. The Gunrunner's Arsenal challenge, for which the player must cripple the right arm of 5 enemies using a shotgun, is a reference to the scene in the 1987 science fiction film RoboCop, in which the villain of the movie, Clarence Boddicker, shoots off a number of Alex Murphy's body parts while imitating a computer targeting system. Before shooting off his hand. There's of course a few references to the classic Star Wars series in Fallout. Wild Wasteland allows the player to encounter a unique interaction in Nipton. When heading east from the Nipton Town Hall, the player can find a burning house with the skeletal remains of characters called Owen and Beru. This is a nod to Luke Skywalker's adopted uncle and aunt, who met a similar fate in Star Wars A New Hope. The challenge, "and no disintegrations," is a play on one of Darth Vader's lines in The Empire Strikes Back. Vader tells Boba Fett that no disintegrations are to take place on his mission to hunt the crew of the Millennium Falcon.
You
free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegration.
A more subtle reference is present in the quest, You'll Know When It Happens. After the Legion assassin is eliminated at the top of the guard tower, Ranger Grant asks for a report on what happened over the radio. One dialogue option given to the player is to respond, "Everything's fine up here, thank you. How are you?" This echoes a line from A New Hope when Han Solo and Luke Skywalker rescue Princess Leia from the Death Star.
But everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
During the quest Ant Misbehaving, when asked by Loyal about what frequency a sonic emitter would need to kill the mutant ants, if the player lacks sufficient science skill, they can suggest to turn it up to 11. This is of course a reference to the iconic line from This Is Spinal Tap, where the guitarist shows the documentarians his custom guitar amps, explaining that they're louder because they can go up to 11.
These go to 11.
The Wizard of Oz gets a couple of nods too. In Boulder City, when the player yet again encounters Victor, if they choose the dialogue option, "I don't like being followed," Victor will say, Now, it's not my fault that Dorothy and the Tin Man happen to be on the same yellow striped road, is it?" Another reference appears in the Old World Blues add-on. Dr. Mobius refers to a group of murderers who were looking for a heart, a brain, and courage, or a spine, which they had all along. This references the cast of The Wizard of Oz. Moving on to the less than overwhelmingly positive sequel, Fallout 4. Some fans of the franchise were upset with the game generally, but one player was upset for an almost complete opposite reason. So upset, in fact, that they felt it necessary to take legal action. In December of 2015, a 28-year-old Russian man took the drastic measure of suing Bethesda Softworks, not because he was upset that the game wasn't up to his expectations, but rather because it resulted in a quote, life-ruining experience. He made the claim that he had become so addicted to the game that he lost both his job and wife. He would skip work, ignore friends, and even his own relationship, resulting in his wife making the decision to leave him. In a statement, he said that had he known the game would be so addictive, he would have approached playing it with more caution. "I would not have bought it, or I would have left it until I was on holiday or until the New Year's holidays." The ridiculousness of this lawsuit is more than clear, considering the man decided to take this action after playing the game for around 3 weeks, attempting the massive undertaking to seek out 500,000 rubles in compensation, around $7,000 at the time. In Fallout 4, the diner located in General Atomic's Galleria is run by 2 General Atomic robots, who make it clear to the player that they are there to serve them. When speaking with these robots and questioning how it is they intend to serve you, or by telling them that you simply aren't hungry, they will immediately begin to attack the player. This entire exchange is actually a reference to The Twilight Zone, specifically the episode To Serve Man, an episode that tells the story of a strange alien race who seem to exist solely to aid mankind, but are actually revealed to be carrying a book called To Serve Man, a cookbook on how to appropriately cook and serve human beings as a dish. The Fat Man is an iconic weapon in the Fallout series, known for causing immense explosive damage. Within Fallout 4, however, each time the players fire a mini nuke with their Fat Man, there is a small chance that the bomb will actually be a dud. While it won't result in a nuclear explosion the player may have hoped for, it can still deal physical damage to foes, like any other typical heavy projectile in the game. We already mentioned that there's Morse code hidden throughout Fallout 3, as well as its mention in passing in a terminal entry in Vault 19 in Fallout New Vegas. Fallout 4 brought back the hidden messages of Fallout 3 with Morse code. However, with coded messages being decoded off ham radios by an agent at the railroad headquarters. The decoded message reads, "Capital Wasteland available for delivery. Package lost, Raiders repeat Raiders. Gen 1S salvage team at Baseball Tango 8. Dead Drop Disco needs a pickup urgent." Let's move on to Fallout 76, because it's a Fallout game that exists. 76 had one particular highlight, and while the game didn't exactly launch as the well-executed multiplayer Fallout romp fans desired, that highlight was still incredibly enjoyable. We're talking about the game's cover of Take Me Home Country Roads. The track, while featured in the game, also received a 7-inch vinyl pressing that was distributed exclusively within Australia. The record was included with the December 2018 issue of Stack magazine, available from retailer JB Hi-Fi. Vitas Varnus, long-term Australian fan of the channel, actually sent us several copies of this record at release, and it's great. Thanks again, Vitas, you're a real one. Now, the Morse code from Fallout 3 and 4 returned once more for 76, with more hidden messages to be found. During a random encounter, a responder iBot can be found floating around transmitting 2 messages on a loop repeatedly. Once decoded, the message reads, "Reconnaissance of designated location recommended standby to receive coordinates," and "Tactical assessment possible situation developing." Now that you have a more intimate knowledge of the Fallout games, let's move on to the recently released and much beloved Amazon series. This is a reminder that this section will contain spoilers for the TV series. In 2019, Todd Howard and Jonathan Nolan, brother and collaborator of acclaimed director Christopher Nolan, initiated talks about adapting the Fallout franchise for TV. Both individuals shared a profound appreciation for the immersive world and narrative depth of the games. These initial conversations laid the groundwork for what would become a collaborative effort to bring the post-apocalyptic universe of Fallout to television screens. Jonathan Nolan's admiration for the series, Fallout 3 in particular, fueled his enthusiasm for this project. As with many fans of the games, he was drawn in by the rich lore, complex characters, and morally ambiguous storytelling that defines the franchise. Todd Howard had previously rejected several offers to adapt Bethesda's games for TV. However, the prospect of collaborating with Jonathan Nolan, renowned for his work on hit shows like Person of Interest and Westworld, proved to be an enticing opportunity. With Amazon on board, the project gained momentum, attracting top talent and experienced industry professionals to key roles. The casting process began with Walter Goggins and Ella Purnell among the first to join the ensemble cast. Each casting decision was carefully considered, as the creative team sought to assemble a diverse and talented cast capable of bringing the characters of Fallout to life with authenticity and depth. As production ramped up, the creative team faced various challenges, from securing filming locations to designing costumes and props that captured the aesthetic of the Fallout universe. Every detail was meticulously planned and executed to ensure that the series remained faithful to the source material while offering a fresh and immersive viewing experience. Filming commenced in mid-2022, spanning multiple locations across the United States, including New York, Utah, and California, as well as places further afield like the Skeleton Coast of Namibia, specifically the ghost town of Kolmanskop. These diverse landscapes provided the perfect backdrop for the post-apocalyptic world of Fallout, with each location carefully selected to evoke the desolate beauty and haunting atmosphere of the games. In fact, according to production designer for the show, Howard Cummings, it was on a location scout in Kolmanskop that it was settled the show would take place in California.
Waves crashing on the ground, and the story actually wasn't written for LA in the beginning. We were standing there and he goes, and I said, "Wow, it's too bad we can't really look at the water. It's fantastic." And he goes, "But what if we can?"
Throughout production, the creative team remained committed to honoring the legacy of Fallout while pushing the boundaries of visual storytelling. From the sprawling wastelands to the iconic Vault-Tec vaults, every aspect of the series was crafted with care and attention to detail, resulting in a visually stunning and emotionally resonant viewing experience. As the premiere date drew near, anticipation reached a fever pitch, with fans eagerly awaiting the opportunity to explore the world of Fallout in a new and exciting way. Finally, on April 10, 2024, Fallout made its long-awaited debut on Amazon Prime Video. The premiere was met with widespread acclaim, and critics and audiences praising the show for its compelling storytelling, stunning visuals, and memorable performances. While generally new viewers and longtime fans alike were happy with the series, Chris Avallone was far more critical of the show. On his blog, Chris explained that while he felt the show was entertaining to watch and specifically went out of his way to congratulate Todd Howard and the rest of the crew for successfully getting a Fallout show made, he expressed that the show felt uneven and compared it more to the feeling of Fallout 4 or 76 games, which he himself is critical of and actively avoids. He was also critical of the overall narrative of the series' writing. On craftsmanship, is Fallout a good, thoughtful, well-paced series whose plot respects its own internal lore, its own dramatic payoffs, and uses foreshadowing effectively, cinematically, and narratively? Nope. He also goes on to explain that to him, the Fallout games were never about the evils of capitalism, and that he groaned upon finding out that Vault-Tec dropped the first nuke, and that their entire conspiracy was purely about greed in this retcon canon. Quote, "While there might be stories told by individuals and quests in Fallout that are anti-capitalism, to say that its roots are anti-capitalist, and Fallout was originally envisioned as anti-capitalist, or an anti-capitalist statement is 100% wrong. It's fine if modern Fallout 3, 4, 76 and the TV series wants to embrace that theme as one of its pillars, but my point is that was not the original intention behind Fallout." He was also unsatisfied with several other retcons, like the unnamed serum which apparently turns people into ghouls and heals their injuries, as well as the idea of ghouls having to take drugs to prevent going feral. If you want to read his entire 2-part blog about the series, the link is in the description. Josh Sawyer, director of Fallout New Vegas, felt differently however. In an interview with Rock Paper Shotgun, he shared his opinions that he doesn't care what the show does with the lore, at least as far as New Vegas is concerned. This might sound weird, but whatever happens with it, I don't care. My attitude towards properties that I work on, and even characters that I create, is that I don't own any of this stuff. It was never mine, and the thing that I made is what I made. With all that being said, there are still a few fun bits of trivia from the series referencing the games. In the final episode, when Lucy tells her father to enter the code for Moldova, the code he inputs is 101097, the release date of the original Fallout game, the 10th of October 1997. The ghoul names the dog in the show Dogmeat, continuing the running naming convention of the video game series. If you text the number for Vault-Tec that appears on screen in the show, 21325-VAULT, you will receive a response offering promotional material and updates for Vault-Tec. However, if you call this number, all that can be heard is what sounds like a man wailing down the telephone. In the flashbacks to the Ghouls' old life on set, some men in Centurion costumes can be seen walking across the studio lot. This could be a nod and potentially foreshadowing of Caesar's Legion that featured heavily in Fallout New Vegas.